Okay, so welcome back. We're now we're talking late 1943, and the 82nd shipped over to this cloud here. Let's change those flight conditions so we can actually see the place. And we'll make it June. So the 82nd was shipped over late 1943, September, I believe. And they originally, they stopped off in Belfast and were based at a place called Cooktown. Briefly, I can't remember where Cooktown is. It was almost just like a stopover place. And then they continued, and the 82nd Airborne Division were basically billeted in what's known as the East sort of Midlands. It was in Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, in this area between Nottingham, Leicester, and Grantham. And the place that we're looking for is near Loughborough. It's called Quorn. It's also known as Quorn Dun, which I believe is this village here. So what we'll do is we will take off from here, the East Midlands Airport, and we'll head south. We're going to visit where the 505th Regiment was billeted, which is this place here. And then what we're going to do is we will look at some of the airfields that they used to take off from. Now, on D-Day. Now, one of them is somewhere around here. Okay, yeah. So we can fly up here to... There was a number of them that were used. I believe Saltby here as well was one of them. We will have a look at the area when we come down, because some of these airfields were not used are not used anymore. Cottesmore was definitely one. I'm just wondering if the other one was. There is one which is no longer. Spanhoe, that's one. Let's, I believe it's Cottesmore. Yeah, so we will go there and then down to Spanhoe. So all these airfields are used to ferry the 82nd Airborne down to the Cotentin Peninsula. We've spoken about the 101st Airborne. They were basically billeted in the area between Reading and Swindon, and they used air bases down into the West Country. And if you remember, we were talking about RAF Apottery, where Easy Company took off from, and that's around this area here. So the 82nd are going to come down and they're going to fly down south this way. They do take off and land later than the 101st. The 101st, I believe, arrive something in around about sort of half 12, sort of 1 o'clock, and then the 82nd come in at about an hour later, 1:30. So let's start here, and we'll get up and we can talk about this area. So we were talking about the regiments here. We've got the 505th, which we're going to look at, where they're billeted, and then you have the 507th and the 508th as well. There was also attached to these 82nd other elements, and when we get off the ground, we'll have a look at those. And what I want to do here is we'll get the autopilot set up so that I can actually talk properly. Let's get the heading sorted out. Well, I think 1,500 feet would be ample. That's good. We'll give it a bring down that's too high. Let's make it about 600 feet. Put the heading mode on and take off the gyro and we'll see if that works. Always a little bit nervous with this aircraft. Away. Okay, didn't like that. Let's okay. Hopefully she's not going to be silly, but she is. Well, this is one of the reasons why we do this, is to show you that we are not an AI. Let's turn that off. Okay, probably a little bit high now, so we're just bringing her down. So I thought I'd use a camera today, but then of course now you can see that I stick my tongue out when I'm thinking. Right. let's turn this around and let's head back south. Head south. Let's put the nav mode on. Okay, heading mode. Heading mode's on. GPS will be active soon, and height looks good. Right, there we go. There we go. Now you can enjoy a bit of outside. So let's change the scroll for you. What should we talk about? Let's do the regiments. Okay. So we're coming up on the village now. Should be just off our right here. So as I say, 505th, 507th, 508th were the regiments. We also had a glider-borne elements, which these were the 325th Glider Infantry Regiment under Colonel Harry Lewis, and they would be coming in on a different operation at around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Just make sure this picks up. So we are looking at this village here on our right now. So we're looking down here. Let's just pause then, and once we can, I'll just jump out and have a look. Yeah, this is the village that the 82nd Division, Airborne Division, had posted the 505th Regiment to. We're just to the south of Loughborough. Let's see if it should have picked up the GPS now, which it has. And then we'll head up to RAF Barkston Heath. So we talked about, so the glider infantry, they were coming in, and there was also another one, the 2nd Battalion, the 401st Glider Infantry Regiment. They were temporarily attached, and they were commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Carroll. And they also had a supporting unit, was the 319th Glider Field Artillery Battalion and the 320th Glider Field Artillery Battalion. And these were all be coming in on midday and in the evening of June the 6th. And there were other elements attached. There was engineers, medical, signals, reconnaissance, and division headquarters. So the division's strength was around about 6,400, I believe, somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 troops. And the glider reinforcements coming in during the day of the 6th and the 7th meant that by mid-June you're talking probably about 12,000 troops. On the day, you've got at the top of the tree, you've got Major General Matthew Ridgway. So he was in overall command of the division. He comes in a glider on D-Day morning. You've got the assistant divisional commanders. So we've got Brigadier General James M. Gavin. He is he led what's known as Force A, which was the initial paratroop assault. So he jumps in with the 505th, and he then takes command of the troops and tries to organise the troops when they've been scattered. There was a Brigadier General George P. Howell. He was in charge of the glider and reserve elements. So he oversaw the glider forces coming in and the later reinforcements by that way. And the whole division was underneath the US First Army, who was commanded by Major General Lawton Collins. As you say, they came to this area probably in late 1943, and they carried on training in this area in preparation. So it's a few days before D-Day. Let's move the clock. So we're talking. Let's talking a few days before June the 5th. Remember that the D-Day gets postponed by Eisenhower due to the weather. They're moved. Anyway, a few days before D-Day, they moved in to their airfields, and the 505th, I believe, are allocated Spanhoe, which we will have a look at. The main airfields used was Spanhoe and Cottesmore, and this is where all these C-47s are lined up. 369 C-47s were used for the first lift. Each C-47 could, depending on the weight carried, something, I believe, like 20 to 30 heavily armed troops to each plane. So yeah, the 505th Regiment is so divided into 3 battalions, and let me just let's jump out here. They always do this. It just turns a little bit too early, so we need to be probably in this area here. There we go. This is Barkston Heath. So this was one that was used. And you can see the telltale taxiway patterns that were very synonymous with the way that they could line up lots of aircraft. It avoids prop blast on other aircraft, so you can get them at different angles. And then they would then have the gliders lined up on the runway. The C-47s would turn onto the runway, hook up on them, and then off they go to the to about 1,000 feet, maybe a bit more. Circle the airfield and form up into these V shapes. Barkston Heath. Let me see if I've got some information on that. Barkston Heath, isn't it? Barton. There we go. Barkston Heath, that's the one. This is this was given to the US Air Force in 1943. Let me just see if I've got a different scroll here. This was given, 1943. It was passed into the control of the U.S. Air Force, and this was the base for the Army Air Force's 9th Air Force, 61st Troop Carrier Group was based here, with elements of the 349th Troop Carrier Group. I will probably do a series on the UK's Second World War airfields. I think it's probably quite a fascinating subject, and yeah, some of these features are pretty interesting and quite revealing. Right, we're now heading to, I believe it's Spanhoe. EGZE. Saltby, sorry, this is Saltby. So we're coming up on RAF Saltby. Should be able to see it here, just in front of us. You can definitely see 2 runways. Let's just stop here and jump out. So it had 3 runways. See if we can see that. There's definitely 1 still operational. It's now a glider field. Again, it was used primarily for by the RAF. They had training units here, maintenance stuff, but for our purposes, it was where the 314th Troop Carrier squadrons were based. The group there was and this looks here like a former runway here, as you can see, going probably north-south. Probably came out to here. You can just sort of see the way the props are lighter in that direction. Typical, well, unusual actually, because all the runways seem to be coming in towards this main triangle there. But there you go. This is former RAF base, Saltby, used on D-Day to carry a 82nd Airborne. It's now a gliding club. Let's head down to what I believe is RAF Cottesmore. Let's check it out. So we're looking at EGXJ. RAF Cottesmore was built in 1918. Sorry, 1938, I read that wrong. Used mainly for training. And on the 8th of September 1943 is when the US Air Force took over control. This became known as US Air Force Station 489. Let's jump out here. It appears that there's only one runway now. Let me see if I can... get an image up for you. Let's find a picture for you. This is RAF not this one, probably this one. Okay, this is RAF Cottesmore from the air. It so I believe at the time it might have been a grass airstrip. That's why we're not seeing too much concrete. And there's only one runway now. But you get that distinctive taxiway pattern concrete. And this is where the 316th troop carrier group is stationed. Lots of transport aircraft came in here that we actually do have a second runway here. Horse gliders are taken off from here as well. They're stored here in this place. So this is again, as I said, this is one of the main embarkation points. Right, let's carry on. And the last one is Spanhoe. Okay, so let's finish off this stream now. It's getting on past an hour and a quarter. We'll finish off with RAF Spanhoe, and then we'll pick his up again, and in the next stream we'll then fly the route to Normandy that they took. So we should see... We should just be able to see it now off the nose. I got a feeling that this actually there's one there. What's that? That's not it, I don't think. Let me just have a look at where Spanhoe is. Spanhoe. Let's just pause here for a second. See if I can work out what that one is. Okay, we're looking here at we've got just flown over this big lake here, and it's just on the south side of it. Okay, here we go. This is RAF North Lothenham, which is not one that I'm familiar with being used to ship out the 82nd, so this probably wasn't one, but again, this looks like it's no longer in use. So I will definitely do a series on these bases, because I think there's a lot of interesting history just from looking at these bases. You can see some of these obvious concrete blocks. Something weird was probably put here, probably some sort of hangers maybe for things. We can have a really good conversation about all these sort of weird and unusual concrete patterns, taxiways, and all that sort of stuff. So we'll definitely do a series on that. But let's keep going now to Spanhoe. I don't know actually how to say it, to be honest. Let's Spanhoe. It was opened in 1943, and should see it's coming up on the nose. It primarily was used as a transport hub, and was closed shortly after the war. It's should be just coming up now. Most of the airfield has been reclaimed by for agriculture. It was requisitioned from local farmers, and so it was given back to them after the war. So this is it here, and this was one of the main airfields where the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment left to go to D-Day, to Normandy. So let's jump out here. And we should be able to see if we can pick up some of these runways. We definitely have a runway probably going in this direction, and there would have been 3. Likelihood there was another one here, and then the third one would probably be in a north-south direction, probably where these trees have now been, or maybe even here. This was where the 315th Troop Carrier Group was based. And there was a scene of an accident here as well in July 1944, where 2 C-47s collided, and apart from one crew member who managed to parachute to safety, the others all died. There were 8 crew members and 26 Polish paratroopers who died in that accident. Okay, so that is a brief look of the 82nd from their basic training all the way through to when they took off here in the East Midlands. When we come back in the next one, we'll follow their journey down, and we'll discuss the possible route that they took and the likely route into their drop zone on the Cotentin Peninsula, which was in this area around here. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, please like, please subscribe. I noticed that we had 8 people subscribed, which is a decent 6-a-side football team, not quite an 11-side football team, and it's not too bad. I'm looking obviously to get to 9. That's my ambition, is definitely to get to 9. So if you are watching, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. This video will be chopped up, so it won't be so long. It'll be chopped up into sort of 20-minute versions and bung onto the YouTube, so you can watch them in brief spurts. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.